More of the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
All right, welcome back in. Zach Gelb Show on this Monday, 609-919-9200, as we broadcast to you live from the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studios, continuing to talk about Derek Jeter. Let's go out to the guest line, as last night Derek Jeter got his number 2 retired and also got the plaque in Monument Park. So let's bring in the 14-time All-Star, the 2-time World Series Most Valuable Player, the 5-time World Series champion. He's a Hall of Famer. He's known as Mr. October. Played with the Yanks from 1977 to 1981 and has been very close with the captain in Derek Jeter. Was at the ceremony last night, and that, of course, is Reggie Jackson. Reggie, we appreciate a few minutes. Thanks for the time, and how are you, Mr. October?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great. So you were a part of that night last night. Legends all over the place with you and, of course, some people that Derek Jeter was very close to in his career. What was it like to be a part of Derek Jeter's special night?
It was a privilege. Really, you see a guy that's so well deserving and a guy that's confident, secure, and humble. All of those things, and great leader, a great friend, a guy that shows people a consistency that resonates, in society in a really positive way. So it was an honor to be there yesterday and be associated with the quality of people that are there, from his parents to from his bloodline and family members to the people that he's befriended. So it's a great environment to be around when he's doing anything. I've been around Derek for 20 some odd years. I think he's 43 or something like that, and I've known him since he's 18, so I've known him more than half his life, and it's been a privilege the entire time.
Take me back to the first time, since you knew Derek Jeter for a very long time and are still very friendly with him. Take me back to the first time you met Derek Jeter, and also what was some advice that you gave him earlier on in his playing days?
I met Derek in, I don't know when it was, but it was his first day in camp at Heinz Field in Tampa on the minor league field, and I looked for his parents because I wanted to see who he was and what he was going to be, and I was extremely impressed. A school teacher and a man who worked in the post office, I want to say, but just high quality people, and so I got some reassurance when I saw his bloodline and where he had come from. Is I've been around baseball for 50 some years, and so there's ways of trying to look at a person and trying to see what their bodies are going to look like as you look at their parents, and trying to see what the attitude's going to be and what the substance of the person is when you see who their parents are is extremely impactful. So I paid attention to that. I spent some time with them and watched him play, and he was a gangly, raw kid, raw talent. Quiet, and so that's the first time I talked to him. I've met him and got a view of what I thought he was going to be for us as a player. I didn't see the leadership skills. You can't see the talent level as to how it manifests, because so much of someone's talent is between your shoulders. It's in your breath, it's in your head. In your mind, and then also what the makeup is into a guy's heart. The numbers on Derek Jeter didn't impress you. He's 6'3", but I bet he didn't weigh 175. And his speed wasn't overwhelming. His arm wasn't overwhelming. His power was not overwhelming. Everything about him was good. His makeup was beyond understanding. The greatness of him was between his ears and inside of his heart, and you couldn't read that. So the analytics on him were average. He was a Joe average. But to his credit, what his makeup was about, and I guess words like determination and things like that don't really tell the story on him. It's how his makeup manifested into his skill set and into his performance is, really what came through and made him who he was. He had an appreciation for work ethic and how he was going to go about it, and that came from his parents. That's how you get that. Is it a gene? Yes, it probably is, because there are players that have better skills than Derek, but his desire for success and his desire about going about it the right way and going down the right road, the journey for him was most important, and it's hard to read the journey. To compare him to someone, you have to go to a guy's makeup. So I would compare him to makeup, to players that I've met. Andy Pettit, Rivera. I didn't play against Aaron, but I've watched Aaron, and I watched McCovey. Those type of players, Carl Yastrzemski, Al Kaline, those type of players that had, the desire for greatness. Frank Robinson, Tom Brady, that kind of player that just has such tremendous character and inner strength. Those are the comparisons that you'd make with a Jeter, and you're so fortunate to be able to be around him, associated with him. While he's here, wherever he goes and wherever he's going to touch, is going to be successful. It's going to turn to gold.
What makes his career so special, and I thought you couldn't have said it any better, and you talk about all the diligent work that he put in his family, is just that class that he showed on the field. And even the class he showed on the field, he did and went above and beyond the class off the field, because you have that much success in New York in this era now of social media, and every move is documented. Reggie, it's really remarkable how there's not a single blemish on this man's career when you look back at how long and how successful he was as the captain and the shortstop of the Yankees.
Yeah, I would leave that alone. Everybody has blemishes. Some are sores and some are nicks. And I think Derek would be the first guy to tell you he's not perfect, but he certainly goes about things the right way. Even when he does something he doesn't approve of, he does his best to go about things the right way.
Reggie Jackson with us right now on the Zach Gelb Show, talking about number 2, Derek Jeter. Obviously a big night last night in the Bronx. So many memorable moments. The flip versus Oakland, which really ignited and fueled that comeback. Diving into the stands versus Boston, the Mr. November home run, leadoff home run in the World Series. Just when you look back at his career as someone that loves the game, is a Hall of Famer, and appreciates greatness, just what are some of your favorite memories of the captain and Derek Jeter?
I think the memories that I have are not so much the great plays that he made, but when he talked to the press, the way he represented the team and himself when he ran on and off the field, the way he went about playing every day, is his stand fast idea or philosophy about steadfast is the word, about I want to play every day. I came to play baseball. I come to go to work every day. And that work ethic was one where he wasn't high, he wasn't low. He was steadfast to go through the journey of the commitment of being a professional, and be as committed to playing as he possibly could with every fiber in him. I think Derek would have gotten very close to 4,000 hits. I think that was the goal. I had conversation indirectly about it. Reggie, how many times did Pete Rose get 200 hits, et cetera, et cetera. But this guy had a mindset to play as long as he possibly could and be a great player with it at the same time. And I think as long as he felt he was contributing, he would have played. I'd like to see him. I think he played 18 seasons. He had a shoulder injury where he missed, 6 or 8 weeks. And then, of course, he had the broken ankle, which hurt him, pretty good. But I really wish that he hadn't gotten hurt at the last couple of years. I think that was why he had left the game at 39 or 40 when he did retire.
When you have a player with that much success who's a star and that has won so many championships, and you talk about his drive, he never got complacent. Just as someone that played the game for a long time, like yourself, as we're talking to Reggie Jackson, why does the love for baseball just never get old? And that the same way Derek Jeter showed up his first day was basically the same mentality and the same approach that he showed up to the ballpark even on his last day.
Well, I think that you can look around sports and see players that are like that. I think Tim Duncan was that way. I think Jordan was that way. I think Kobe Bryant was that way. Whether it be Wilt Chamberlain or Bill Russell or Jerry West, certainly there are a lot of guys, but look at the names, of who those players are. Henry Aaron, and Cal Ripken, Juan Marichal, Bob Gibson. I mean, they're all the greatest. When you have names like that, Brady and Brett Favre. So the list goes on, and so it's a very cool thing to see it and to be a part of it, as we all have and had with the Yankees and being around New York. We got to watch Derek Jeter, we got to watch Walt Frazier, we got to watch Willis Reed and Bradley and DeBusschere and players like that just are very, very special.
You look at the history of the Yankees, and you don't need me to tell you that. We all know how much they've won with the just marvelous players they've had, all-time great players, Ruth, Gehrig, DiMaggio, Mantle, Yogi Berra, just to be a part of that history. And you have a moment last night where the family gets back together on the field in the Bronx. Just what does it mean to you after all these years looking back about your time in New York and what it meant to put on that Yankee uniform?
I think as I get older, I'm 70 years old, and I take a look at the opportunity that I have had to be associated with the Yankees and to be around the great players that they have, the great managers they've had, the organization that's being run by the Steinbrenners, that continues to do their best to try to put a great product on the field. And so I understand the privilege. I understand the honor of being associated yesterday, which is the byproduct of lots and lots of quality people. And it's the people in the clubhouse. It's the doctors and the trainers. It's the people throughout the organization. I had made a comment to our director of player personnel with the Yankees in the minor leagues, and he had talked to me and sent out a message to several. Thank you so much for the hard work. The Yankees look like they're back on top. This is very early in the season, and my comment back was, I thank you for the comments and the accolades about what I've contributed, but I'm one of about 30 people that have helped. There's been many, many comments that I've heard about Aaron Judge from people, Reggie, you've done a great job with him, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you're leaving something out. this guy had a hitting coach in the Gulf Coast League. He had one in the Instruction League. He had one in Tampa. He had one in Charleston. He had one in Trenton. He had a coach in Scranton, and he's got coaches now. And so all of these people, including ownership, are responsible or participating, director of player and personnel, general manager, all these people are participatory in the success of this great player that we have here now. And so the credit doesn't go to one person. If it goes to one person, then you give it to Aaron Judge, the guy that's fighting the battle every day and turning the hard work into something that's successful. But it's in building champions and in building teams of success. The first word you need to learn is we. That is the first word you need to learn is we. And whether you're, a manager like Joe Torre or a general manager like Brian, our guy Cash, or the ownership, you hear those words, you hear that word we, and you got something going, you got something on the right track. And, if you could say one thing about Derek and what does he stand for, certainly it's commitment and character and class, but, he recognizes the importance of we when you're trying to build a championship.
And you saw that last night, especially in his speech and also in his entire career as we're talking to Reggie Jackson. Hey, since you bring up the Yankees, this year they're 22-13. You mentioned Aaron Judge. He leads the league right now in home runs. Last year, the concise time we were able to see him, he was under 200 on the average. Just this Yankees team right now, they have a complete team when it comes to the batting order. This lineup has been unbelievable. Just give me some of your thoughts on this current Yankee team, since they're a lot further ahead than what many people would expect at this time.
We're good. We can score, and we've got confidence. The team does, and so I think the guys are continuing to learn and continuing to develop, and I think that's extremely important. As good as they're playing now. And if you can look around from the two catchers to the third baseman, shortstop, the second baseman, the first baseman's going to get better, and the other first baseman's injured, but the outfield play and Hicks and Judge and Jacoby and Gardner, those guys that are playing well, if we pitch, we're going to be there at the end because we're going to score some runs. And all of the time here, every day, we're learning how to gel and develop and become better and better is what I see. So we're a good club. We're in good shape, and we're going to get better. We need to get better in some other areas. But I look for us to be there at the end.
When you look back at your Yankee career, and so much was because of George Steinbrenner, and you talked a lot about the great late boss of the Yankees and that concept of we. When you go back and just describe your time when you got to play under the boss when he was owning the team, and then also your relationship after your Yankee career ended, what do you remember about George Steinbrenner, and what did that man really mean to you?
George Steinbrenner was certainly special to me. I think everybody pretty much knows that. And I think anybody that's played for him under his leadership feels very similar in the same way that Derek does. And whether you're working a clubhouse or whether you work on the ground crew or, work in that stadium, then your memories of George Steinbrenner are about the greatness of the Yankees and the responsibility that you have to contribute to that to the ball club and to the franchise of being successful. So that's what I think about. That's what I recognize. That's how I try to go about it.
Your Yankee career was so well documented and a memory that is always with every Yankee fan. And we talk about Jeter and how clutch he was. Well, everyone gave him that nickname, Mr. November, after the home run in November, but you were and you still are Mr. October. You talk about that approach a little bit earlier on with Jeter. When you go back to your approach in the postseason, and everyone points out that 1977 Game 6 where you had the 3 home runs and the Reggie chants and all that, when you just look back at your approach, not only in the postseason, but specifically that night, just take me through your approach a little bit more about that big night.
I almost get tired of that.
Yeah.
It gets almost over dramatized. I had a good night, and it worked well. I had a few other good nights. It was really exciting to do it in New York, to be part of this great franchise in a way that's remembered very, very positively. It's something I happen to do on stage in New York, and with the pinstripes on, and that seems to make it more impactful. I don't want to, talk about all this me stuff. I get a lot of credit for that, but it's not as comfortable talking about it over and over again. I like it when it's acknowledged. I'm grateful for it, and so grateful that it's part of New York, and one of the great cities in the world, and then greatest city in the world, in my opinion, and in at least one of the greatest sports franchises in the world as well, if not the greatest sports franchise in the world. So, when you have 27 world championships, you're way ahead of a lot of people. I think the Cardinals have 11 or 10 or 11, and no, I don't know that anyone else. I don't think anyone else has double digits. The Super Bowls don't go back as far. They're only 50 years old. The World Series is, 100 or more. So, but 5-6 Super Bowls is the top. So there's a lot of pride and a lot of good feeling about being part of a great franchise, and then having, a piece of that building that they built, have my name associated with it.
Reggie, I got 2 more for you before we let the great Reggie Jackson run, the Hall of Famer, and of course, Mr. October. Let's just, since we're talking a lot about the game, let's talk about the game now for just a little bit. A lot of people bring up the pace of the game, and there's now a responsibility of the commissioner to try to find a way to speed up the game. To me, I don't want to ruin the pure element of baseball. I think you need to speed it up a little bit, but not ruin that pure element. What do you say to people right now that demand for the pace of the game in baseball and demand for these drastic changes to the game that you played many years ago?
I watched the ball games yesterday. They weren't exactly great because the pitching wasn't that good, but I sure enjoyed every bit of it. I never thought it was running too slow. We played in the rain. We made errors. Guys struck out, and I enjoyed every bit of it and didn't think it needed to be changed one bit. I get disappointed when I see some of the things going on in the game from people that never played. The game needs to be left alone to a point, and I don't care for a lot of manipulation. I do think that I'd like to see the umpires speed the game up, but I don't like this automatic ball 4. There's some other things they're talking about changing. I heard them talking the other day about the 19-inning game we played, and they think they should play 2 extra innings and then have a tie. That would make me throw up.
I think it would make us all throw up. Finally, Reggie, before we let you run, just since you are a Hall of Famer and one of the great players that this game has seen, especially with your play in the postseason. Since you're in that Hall of Fame and it means a lot to you, there's a big debate now with the steroid era, and it's one that's ongoing, and we've seen some players get in, some players not get in, like all-time great players like a Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are still waiting. What's your stance on players that used performance-enhancing drugs when it comes to the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown?
It's a short story. They shouldn't be in. If players that are getting in now have had brushes with and have association through the media, as the media has said, there's players now getting in the Hall of Fame that have had associations with steroids, and if they start letting steroid guys in, I'm not for it. But I think that the other players that have had brushes or have associations, or the media has said they're associated with steroids, I think they should get in as well. So I don't care for holding some out and letting some in. If you're going to let players that have had associations, that the media has said they have associations with steroids, then all the players should get in. So I'm disappointed when this guy gets in and this guy doesn't. So I talk about it. I get reprimanded. I got told to stay away from the team one time. So at this point, I don't know whether I even care anymore about it. It's a disappointment for me. It is what it is. And if you're going to let players in that have had association with steroids or have doubts or accusations, et cetera, then they should let everybody in. You can't just keep some out and let some in. It was very important to me at one time. I lose my desire to be around it anymore.
Why did you feel so important about it, where you have a player like Barry Bonds, and people look at Barry Bonds and they know what he did, but still, that guy from a record standpoint, whether you believe he is or not, but from the statistics, he is the home run king in the game. Just why did you feel so passionately about it then that, hey, this guy cheated, so therefore he shouldn't be in? Because some people, they bring up the argument, including myself, then you feel like you're ignoring, an era of history in baseball by excluding him in the Hall of Fame, even though he did commit a wrong.
Well, you made sense until your last sentence. You said what you said in your last sentence didn't make sense. You were ambiguous. So make it shorter about Bonds so I can give you an answer, because
sure.
I would say, you're right.
So here's my point on Barry Bonds. Like, for example, we all know what he did, but to me, let's say, I bring, my son that I don't have right now, and let's say 10, 15 years into Cooperstown, and I have to explain to him, well, hey, look at this. This is Barry Bonds. He has the record of going into the Hall of Fame, but he doesn't have a plaque. And to me, I think that they should put Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame, because even though the public knows that he cheated, he's still an all-time great player. Like, to me, it doesn't make sense to ignore that era of history by not putting him in the Hall of Fame.
Then what do you do with Pete Rose?
Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame, too, in my opinion.
Oh, okay. And in that case, Mr. Gelb, I would agree with you.
Okay, fair enough.
I would just say that I agree with you. I personally think that it's going to change with the way the voting is going. I think it's changing. I think as the game gets a little older and continues to move on, I think people are going to forget about this guy used steroids or that guy didn't. It's accepted now. I take a look at marijuana, and I hear about kids, 75, 80, 85% of the kids in high school are using it because it's legal. Steroids are legal too, but not in some areas. Marijuana is legal to use, but not in some places. The world is changing, and I don't want to get with it in some of those areas. I don't want to accept marijuana and people using it and being impaired when they're driving. This state has it, that state doesn't. So be careful with the uses of some of these so-called approved drugs, or it's okay, everybody's doing it, because you're not going to get a job with Google. You're not going to get a job with Apple. You're not going to get a job with those companies that are setting the pace in the world and are guiding the future. You're going to be eliminated. Don't be careful, young kids, that you don't eliminate yourself from the system.
Well, Reggie, hey, this was a great conversation. We appreciate it. Thanks so much for checking in with us, and we appreciate your insight.
Okay, my friend. Take care.
There he is, Mr. October, Reggie Jackson, with us on the Zach Gelb Show. Fox Sports 920, the Jersey. We'll get, and I'll just clarify my point on the Hall of Fame, and we'll further that conversation in just a second. But I really do appreciate Mr. October's insight on Derek Jeter, someone that he has known for a very long time. And I love the perspective of when you know someone before they turn out to be this great player. Reggie Jackson knew Derek Jeter when he was a youngster, when he was just a kid in the Yankees organization. And I thought he put it so perfectly, the point where he was talking about the makeup of Derek Jeter. And that's what makes Derek Jeter so special. If you just look at him, you're not going to say, oh, this is an all-time great baseball player. If you just looked at him and, you thought he was, a regular guy and you knew nothing about him, but then you just see the way that he performed every day and the attitude that he came to the ballpark with, it really does play an imperative role in the makeup of Derek Jeter. The fact that he never got complacent. And you look at all the teammates that he played with and all the championships that he won, winning 5 World Series. And he just had that gene of just being clutch. Whenever, and John Sterling was saying this last week, whenever you needed a big hit or whenever you needed a rally to get started, Derek Jeter always came through. And he delivered on the biggest stage for many years. And to me, he never had a blemish. He was someone that lived a perfect life. And I know no one is perfect in life, but he lived as close to a perfect life as you could. And he just handled it with such class, both on and off the field. You hear all these people that had legendary battles with Derek Jeter, just respect him so much. You saw an Instagram post from Big Papi earlier today. Even at the end of his career, in that final game at Fenway Park, his final game of his career, he got a standing ovation from the Boston Red Sox fans. This is just someone that the game loved because of his passion, his class, and just the way that he won. And he's one of the special players. And that's why it was just awesome to see last night him get that ovation, the Derek Jeter chants, and then also to get the number 2 retired, which is well-deserved. We all know that. He just plays such an imperative role in the annals of Yankee history. And then you get the Monument Park plaque. And that is probably that is the last one of the core 4 and the last one of that era. I think I saw Jorge Posada say, finally the era does close with Derek Jeter getting honored last night. And then you're going to have a new era of Yankee history, which we're seeing right now with Aaron Judge. And we'll see how successful and how long this era could be. There's still a lot of work to go as you're in the infant stages. But last night, Derek Jeter, just a standing ovation, and he's a role model, and he really just does set the example of how the game should be played and then how you should interact with the fans and carry yourself as a professional. But since at the end, we were talking with Reggie Jackson about the Hall of Fame, and I wanted to bring up the pace of game and then the Hall of Fame debate. At one point, I wanted to tap the microphone and say, hey, is this on? Is this thing working? Check test 1, 2. When we got to the point where he said I was very ambiguous and I wasn't making much sense, not the first person to say that, and then also won't be the last person, but we agreed on some stuff and then we disagreed. And I was at a point where we're going back, several years ago, where I originally stated, do not put any of these guys in the Hall of Fame. They cheated. But then I changed my tune on this with the steroid guys. And I got to the point where they should all get in. Because for me, it comes down to that you can't ignore an era of history in baseball. And I know some people will point out, and I've been to Cooperstown before, oh, hey, even though Pete Rose isn't in the Hall of Fame, even though Barry Bonds isn't in the Hall of Fame, there are displays in the Hall of Fame that do acknowledge them. But when you get into the plaque section of the Hall of Fame, that honors the all-time great players. And for me, always, I don't care what you did off the field when it comes to this regard of being classified as a great Hall of Famer. I don't care if you cheated when it comes to being in the Hall of Fame and being regarded as a Hall of Famer. Now, the public opinion, we all know you cheated. I know Barry Bonds cheated. I know Roger Clemens cheated. We know Pete Rose gambled on the game of baseball. But I'm at a point where you can't ignore the game. And if you want to put an asterisk on Pete Rose's plaque that says he gambled on baseball, go ahead. You want to put an asterisk on Barry Bonds' plaque and say he took steroids, go ahead, because you're just being honest. But they have to be in the Hall of Fame, and you just can't exclude history where, let's just say, and I know I don't have a kid right now, I'm only 22 years old, but when you bring your kid to the Hall of Fame in a few years, and he could go in one room and say, oh, here's them honoring Barry Bonds, showing he's the all-time home run king, but then you get into the plaque section, well, Dad, why isn't he in the Hall of Fame? Why doesn't he have the plaque? And the answer, if that was the question, is because he cheated. But still, just because you cheated doesn't mean that you didn't accomplish greatness in the game. For example, Barry Bonds cheated. He still accomplished great statistics in the game. And just as a fan of the game, you have to honor that. And the public knows you cheated. But just to try to sweep it under the rug and have these writers exclude them from the Hall of Fame, it just doesn't resonate with me. It just doesn't sit well with me. And I get it. Hey, we've had many great players on this show before that say they don't want those guys in the Hall of Fame, and that's their right. But when I look at it and when I evaluate it, those guys have to be in the Hall of Fame. Because when I grew up, Barry Bonds, clean or not, and we know he wasn't clean, was one of the greatest hitters I've ever seen. And to not have him in the Hall of Fame, to not have the all-time hit king, Pete Rose, in the Hall of Fame, we all know what they did. But they got to be in the Hall of Fame. To me, it's that simple. They were great players. The Hall of Fame is about putting great players in. And yes, it's special when you have a player with a special character like a Derek Jeter. But then you have guys that didn't have special character, but they were still great players. And I want to see great players in the Hall of Fame. We're long overdue for a break here on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920, The Jersey. Let's take one right now. We'll take a break. 609-919-9200 is the telephone number if you want to hop on board with us. And we're coming back with the Zach Gelb Show right here on Fox Sports 920, The Jersey, right after this.